All right, that's a great segue. Welcome to Always Choose Violence, the only podcast where battles are a business.
And magic is our mantra.
I'm Navisk8r.
And I'm JJ.
Dive deep with us into the pioneer format of Magic: The Gathering.
While we unravel the tactics of the game and the philosophy of always coming out swinging,
Whether you're a seasoned planeswalker
or just curious about the realm, ready your deck and let's get started.
for every game,
Every challenge,
every lesson,
we always
choose
violence.
violence. That went way
Fire.
better in
Fire
practice.
explosion.
Like I said, episode 100 will get it. I swear to you all. Honestly, it's going to be my future self listening. So I swear to you, future Navisk8r, we will be better.
I think I think you are very optimistic. It's so bad. We're terrible.
Yeah, take us away. Yeah, key line. Let's go.
Oh yeah, we got things. We got a key line. Are we still going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got
get ready. Get ready.
We're scripted, folks. Stick to the script.
All right, one more time from the top. Am I playing the intro video again? Are you
No.
You want to do it from the top? You ready?
No. I think you can just start at get ready.
Okay, get ready. As today, we lay out the key cards that make up the arsenal of our Pioneer format.
Wow.
This is called the Essentials of the Arsenal. So we're going to define some critical cards in Pioneer, some combos and colors that lay out a foundation of a sturdy Pioneer deck. I believe what we're headed towards in this is a kind of a staples understanding of Pioneer.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we kind of put our heads together beforehand and came up with a short list of, what when you look at the quote unquote meta, what cards are you going to encounter? This doesn't, include the one-offs. There's no Archfiend of the Dross in this list. And it also doesn't include staples of a particular deck. Like, for instance, we're not really going to talk about how Strict Proctor is an important card in a Lotus Field Azorius control deck, right? Because that's only pertinent to that deck. We're looking at, hey, this is the Pioneer format, and these are the cards that are important. Because, again, this is the Always Choose Violence podcast where we're a couple of average Magic players, a couple of what did you call me, Timmy? We're a couple of Timmys. Yeah, we're a couple of Timmys aspiring to be a Spike, right? And so we kind of want to catalog that journey, and we want to talk about what we see and what we understand. So if there's a deeper level of understanding, or if there's something that we miss, drop a comment. We're live right now on Twitch and maybe YouTube. I don't really have YouTube figured out yet, but we're live on Twitch at least.
Yeah, that's working.
Yeah, Twitch is live. So drop us a comment there if you have a suggestion you want us to talk about, or leave a comment in the video when it is posted on YouTube, so that we can revisit it, because input is important. I think really, JJ, I feel like this podcast is, one of our tools for improvement. Ultimately, I feel like we're doing it for ourselves more than anything else.
Yeah. Well, definitely from the last episode of this one, just talking about it, and it kind of laid out what I needed to know. And you'll see that in this episode. It's like the things that we talked about last week inspired a huge wave of like data collection.
And we talk throughout the week, but we're really intentional about this now, where I don't want to know what JJ's been looking at and been working on, and I told him I'm not going to tell him what I'm looking at, because I just opened up a box sitting right there over my shoulder of Wilds of Eldraine commons on commons, and I started rifling through the set. So, but we didn't talk about it with each other yet, because I realized that this real-time reaction in an analysis moment is what we're trying to capture and catalog by doing this podcast. So let's start with white deck. So white deck. So we're talking control here, Azorius control. What else is around in white in Pioneer format?
Mono white humans
Mono white humans.
is another one. Let's
You'll
see.
you'll see some of these staples in Boros decks.
Some
Um,
spirits sometimes, Azoria
some
spirits.
some spirits sometimes, and then your fires iterations. I think, especially with the first card. If you're all right, I'll just kick it off. Is
Please.
yeah, Leyline Binding. So Leyline Binding is has become, almost as ubiquitous as Fatal Push, as one of the removal spells that you have to almost count on when you're playing someone that, is all of a sudden throwing triumphs on the board.
Yeah.
It's a
And that's
very real threat.
and it's something you have to take into account for. It's one of those the reason why what you were referring to, I believe, was the 5 color enigmatic fires, or any kind of enigmatic deck that uh, you 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 put your triomes out there. They have multiple land types on it, so this is usually comes out for one, cost
Yeah.
one, and then you sack it
At
to
instant
enigmatic,
speed.
and it's a 5 mana spell. So you're pulling a six mana creature out of your deck and putting on the battlefield with enigmatic.
And actually, this is a good moment from a game I actually played this week. So I I started jamming a couple of Yorion Fires games just because I realized I haven't practiced a lot with that deck. And it's a toolbox, especially the Yorion version. There's so many one ofs, so it takes some time to be familiar with. And Leyline is fatal in that it controls some other staples that we'll talk about later, like Shieldrids. It'll control, uh, any of the big green beaters that get put on the battlefield that are critical to devotion. And it's an easy sack, like you said, to enigmatic into an Atraxa.
Yeah.
And in an ideal situation, if you're playing the enigmatic version, at least you're you're binding a token, so it becomes an empty ley line binding, and your opponent gets nothing back. But if you're going to get a 7/7 with vigilance, lifelink, death touch in Atraxa, um, oh yeah, there's ley line binding. Um, it it almost doesn't matter if they get something back.
Yeah.
Anything else on leyline binding?
No, it's one of the most efficient enchantments that I've ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, from Dominaria, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't printed before Dominaria United. You see, when
Nope.
for me, Dominaria United is what I mean when I say Dominaria, because that's the only Dominaria I really know. But I realize I have to. I realized that last episode that yeah, we have to clarify for all you real Magic players out there. I'm a Gen Z uh, uh spellcaster
Yeah.
mage. How about next temporary lockdown? You want to pick
Oh,
up that one?
yeah. So temporary lockdown. You'll find this here. Let me pull it up. So temporary lockdown. You'll find this in the same deck as you would in enigmatic fires. It's a great thing to bounce. It's also in Azorius control. Um, you're not gonna find it where you're not gonna find it is in any kind of go wide creature deck like a Pia Scalds or Boros aggro, anything like that. For white one, you're going to, when it enters the battlefield, you exile each non-land permanent. Each non-land permanent, I'm going to just hang my hat on non-land permanent, mana value 2 or less until it leaves the battlefield. How cheap is this to get rid of? Uh, you got to think about in context temporary lockdown against something like
Humans.
Rakdos sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
So you're getting rid of the creature, you're getting rid of the sack, the what is it, the
The Witch's Oven.
Yeah, the Witch's Oven. You're getting rid of the Witch's Oven,
All
and you're
their
getting rid of
tokens,
all
every
the
single
tokens. Yeah. So
gone
you're
forever.
yeah, and against stuff like Pia Scalds, it's a board wipe. Um, with what's great to do with a Yorion deck with this, of course, if you see someone with Yorion, you're gonna see temporary lockdown. If it's not in their main board, it's going to be in their sideboard, because this is a beautiful thing to bounce.
Well, you know, on the last episode, we talked about meta shifts, and this is one of the cards that was a part of the meta shift that I noticed.
Yeah.
Before it was sideboard only, right? Where when we were in the combo meta, right, post Pro Tour Phyrexia, um, you know, and Rakdos Sack was the dominant mid-range strategy that was shutting down all of the, or sorry, Rakdos mid-range was the dominant mid-range strategy that was locking down all of the aggro strategies for the combo people to win. Temporary lockdown just stayed in the sideboard until it was, you know, a mono white humans matchup or a spirits matchup, and then it would come out of the board in games 2 and 3. But now, because we are in an aggro meta, this is a main board staple for Azorius Control and Fires. It's one of those must-haves because, like you said, it shuts down. You know, my pet deck, as we talked about, is Pia Scalds. Like, this is my arch enemy. I keep on, you know, I have in the back of my head, I need to have a strategy to beat temporary lockdown because you start from 0. It's so effective against aggro, go wide.
Yeah.
Next.
So if you're playing aggro, that you need to be on the lookout for this or have an answer for this.
And you have to have an answer for it, exactly, whether it's mainboarded or sideboard. The next is a mainboard staple in my pet deck is Chained to the Rocks. And maybe I put it in here because it's featured in the 5-color enigmatic decks too.
Yeah, and I've seen it in Boros as well.
Yeah, Boros Convoke. So it's in a few decks right now, but it is absolutely, I mean, it has to be in Boros at minimum, right? If not more than red white, because you have to put it onto a mountain. So Chained to the Rocks is a 1 white enchant a mountain you control. When Chained to the Rocks enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Chained to the Rocks leaves the battlefield. So downside, yeah, it's sorcery speed. All the upside, it's 1 white. You can put it on a basic mountain, which means that mountain isn't going anywhere. You know, I haven't really seen land destruction prevalent, even though it does exist.
It'll happen.
It'll happen. It is inevitable. And for me, what I love about it is it's one of my main tools to take down the green stompy decks. Like, oh, you're gonna play a 3-mana creature on turn 2, you know, a troll or a Pelucranos to get like mad devotion for turn 3. It's like, okay, time to reset this clock and play a Chain to the Rocks. And it exiles it, right? So they don't get any, it doesn't kill it, it doesn't get it, you know, the mono green players don't get any of their cool effects. Chain to the Rocks is dope. Yeah.
All right, and coming up next is
you're laughing because you know I'm gonna say it.
Okay.
What's the card? What is the staple, JJ?
So sometimes we yeah. So the Wandering Emperor, if you're going up against Azorius Control, and they leave 4 mana untapped,
you got to know better than to attack.
You know, the Wandering Emperor is gonna make its appearance. So it's a planeswalker with flash. It puts a creature out on the battlefield, or it can exile a tapped creature, and you gain 2 life. So basically, it's threat removal, and it's putting a threat on the battlefield.
And that's the primary mode they use it in, is that threat removal.
Yeah.
And why JJ was laughing. So
no.
so Wandering Emperor came out in Kamigawa, my first real set in Magic the Gathering. Neon Dynasty. Again, I get it. You know, you boomers, there was another Kamigawa. This is Kamigawa for me. All right. Came out in Neon Dynasty. And at the time, you know, this was shortly after I tried to build the 4 Soul Ring constructed 60 card deck, that I tried to build an all samurai deck because they had a bunch of synergies of like when a single samurai attacked, and it was extremely weak as a standard deck, but freaking awesome to play with. And I went and I bought a playset of it. And JJ was like, "Why would you do that? It is at its peak. It's never going to get higher than it is right now." I think I picked them up for like freaking the foil versions for like $15 a pop or something like that. And I'm seeing foil promos right now are 33, right?
Yeah, it's
50.
like it
Yeah.
was very well. You just got lucky. All right.
All right, you just got lucky, punk. You know, I think
What else?
it's
What
like
else did you
Einstein
buy?
got lucky with relativity. You know
all,
what?
all right. What have you bought that tanked? Like, because I have one that I bought. I thought for sure. I'm like, oh, this is going to be the bee's knees. Because there were plenty, but one of them that came to mind was Rot Priest.
Skrelv isn't worth shit now. I mean,
It's not.
isn't worth crap. No, look at Skrelv. Pull it up. This is a tangent. Also, kind of a white staple. You know, kind
Yeah,
of. It
bad.
was cool Pro Tour for X. Yeah.
$4.
What is the showcase version? I don't know what that means.
Nobody
Because
plays
that's the
that.
one I got. Yeah, I got the showcase foil. And how much is that now? Like
It's
$2?
yeah, $2.
Yeah, $2. All right, that's it. $2. I think I bought them at $15 a pop or $10 a pop.
Yeah,
This was right after we saw what's his name, Ben Madsen, who was the guy, the runner up to Reed Duke.
yeah.
Benton
That's
Benton
correct.
Madsen.
Madsen.
Yeah, yeah. He had it in the enchantment deck, and then people were splashing it in the humans deck, and it's like, oh, this is so good.
But
What's venerated?
$2. I paid like $38 for a playset.
Oh, it's coming. It is. It's
It's
real.
gonna happen.
It was a top 8 deck in the standard RC that was here in San Diego, the
Yeah,
DreamHack RC. So
yeah.
toxic is a thing. It is also inevitable. We just haven't figured it out yet. But I think that wraps it up for white. At least all the cards that came to my mind when I was looking through it. Was there anything else you wanted to talk to?
No, I think it's for straight white. I mean, mono white humans, you're gonna see a much
And
more like
it's a
nuanced white
niche.
cards.
Yeah, it's niched. I guess ossification,
Yeah,
is one that we could talk about that's in a few decks besides humans, but is also in humans.
and
That's a
declaration and stone is another one that's in
deck
there
and
a lot.
stone. I'm not crazy about, but
Yeah,
it's there. Yeah. Okay. So those are honorable mentions. So black, fatal push. Um, that is the litmus test of your deck. If you are playing against any sort of deck that has black in it, you can almost count they're gonna have fatal pushes there
mm-hmm.
because it just deals with everything you need to deal with early on. It deals with elves, it deals with Pias, it deals with steamkins, it deals with spirits, it deals with everything.
Yeah.
I think fatal push is a workhorse in Pioneer, and it's only $2.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
you need a place. It's like when you move your like any like Rakdos deck or a deck with black in it, you almost take your 4 thought seizes and your 4 fatal pushes, and you move them around into those decks. It's like the 8 cards that are always in your black deck.
Yeah. And brings another removal spell to mind. I think you called it choke out the throat last time, but it's go for the throat.
Did you call it that?
So
Don't call
everything.
it joke.
I don't know. You called it choke or something. Go for the throat. So
I was close.
um, yeah, you had the right body parts in mind. Super cheap card. It's a common. Um, and this I think pretty much sweeps the board. Anything that Fatal Push can't touch, Go for the Throat can't. And both of them are working at instant speed. Just destroy target non-artifact creature. You're the only thing you need to keep in mind when you're using Go for the Throat, at least in the green matchup, is all of the exile effects that like Cavaliers exiles and they get whatever they want on the top of their deck, or Troll just turns into an enchantment and they maintain the devotion for Nykthos.
Yeah.
Outside of that, it's really good. Although we are starting to see a few more um, artifacts being into play. I'm thinking of
Yeah.
one in the mill deck, where whenever it attacks, you mill half your deck rounded up. But that's a one off. You know what
Yeah.
I'm talking
That's
about? You
yeah, I
like
know
the
which
mill
one you're
deck.
talking about. It's that weird Mer Turesian something something.
I have no idea.
I think
And yeah, yeah. I mean, Brothers World War came out with a
haha.
whole
I
bunch of
got
artifacts. You got it?
nobody plays this, but uh it's mind breaker. There it is. Turesian
Teresian.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is
Whenever
this is
it,
this is on in my goofy. This is only 70 cents. This is in my
yeah.
goofy deck.
How much is a showcase foil?
60
72
cent.
cents. Oh,
Go. Oh, you
nice.
can.
Buy your play sets. They're going to be huge.
It's gonna be huge.
No, this is a mill deck, I guess, quote unquote staple. Because they match it with that enchantment, that blue enchantment that makes you mill however much you milled that turn.
Yeah,
Um,
that's praying sanity. Sanity.
oh, how about Liliana of the Veil? That's another interesting card to talk about with regard to meta shifts.
But talk about the old school players having this reprinted. It used to be $100 card,
Yeah,
or I
and
would say, yeah, it was in like the 70s and 80s for a long time, and now it's like
it's like
reprinted.
$10.
Yeah, that happened with
Keep the
uh,
change.
uh, Tarmogoyf. Like
Oh,
when
okay.
Tarmogoyf used to be like hundreds of dollars, and
Yeah.
then they reprinted it, and now it's like 15 cents.
Heck
It's
yeah.
like, yeah.
Well, this was a card that everyone was super excited when it got reprinted. I was stoked because I ripped a playset out of packs because I'm lucky like that.
Hmm.
Um, and then um, was it when we were shifting to, I don't know. I just remember at first it wasn't effective. What was going on in the meta when Liliana was just kind of and no
Well,
one was really playing it except for the devotion? It was a sideboard card.
she's a little. There was a lot of aggro decks out, and she's a little slow to react to those.
Yeah, but it's come back. It's
Yeah.
come back as a staple in the Rakdos mid. By staple, I mean like it's main boarded again. For a while, it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't. I've seen it out of the main board and out of the sideboard of Rakdos midrange
Yeah,
recently. Like it's not it doesn't pack as much of a punch. I think people are leaning heavily on Shieldreds for the win,
mhm.
and then a lot of extra removal, like instant speed removal.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Instead of
there's
the sorcery speed -2, now you have to protect it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. What about? I mean, good segue into Shieldred.
yeah.
Shieldred the Apocalypse. I
Those are
remember. when this was printed, I pulled one out of the pack and I was like, huh, this looks good, and I tossed it aside.
Oh, neat. Neat.
Lo and behold, it's probably the single most prevalent staple in decks that have black in it.
Yeah, look at
Um,
this. It's like ridiculous how expensive these are.
well, and it's the it's a 4/5. It's so hard to get rid of a 5 toughness creature nowadays.
Yeah, but if you're going to jump into Rakdos mid-range, you need $300 for Shieldreds.
Yeah, awesome.
another
Get some.
another 50 for Thought Seizes, and then
And
another 80 for Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
yeah, all right.
It's so
So
expensive.
it'll take you a few months. So and side note, she's my favorite commander now.
Yeah.
I use one of the showcase versions for that, of course. That's, I feel like, one of my other good buys. I feel like I got into Shieldred when they were still low. I remember I picked
Oh
up
yeah.
a play set of the showcase foils for like $25 each or something,
I
50 bucks
remember
each.
you moved really fast on those. I think you were very like fire, like just point and fire, like when you, oh, I like that. You get a play set, and then you weren't very discerning, which is kind of how I was at the beginning. Uh,
Yeah.
when I first started playing that, because it was, you wanted as many of the cool things as possible, and so I tend to be a little more like hesitant. I'll wait for the, oh, it looks like it'll drop $1 in a year, I'll buy those next year.
Yeah, no, Shieldred, I don't think, I mean, because of how central it is in the metagame, like it punishes every single draw spell, every draw step, and it helps you get back in the game with life gain. Like you can just play a Shieldred and just leave it on the board and it will help you win the game, which
Yeah.
is nuts. Shieldred the Apocalypse, not to be confused with Shieldred from Phyrexia, which is another good card just in standard, not in real life. Um, I put Meat Hook Massacre on here just because we're in an aggro meta, and this I feel like is something else
Yeah.
that people need to think about.
Yeah, I think that's legit because they're with all the aggro decks. This is essential. This is your blackboard wipe. This is the enchantment that you can sacrifice now. I know we'll talk into Wilds of Eldraine a little bit later, but there's a new bargain mechanic,
Right.
and I think what's hot in black now is that Beseech the Mirror, where it's you play. If you sack it, you can basically pay 4 mana, go get Shieldred, and put it on the battlefield. If you sack a enchantment or a token or an artifact, so
And
this is
I've seen sack decks have this in the sideboard. In games 2 and 3, they don't reveal Gigantha. And they play a Meat Hook and they'll cast it for 2 for X equals 0 and
yeah,
just add it like where I play a Valkamir that more or less would have otherwise shut down the deck. If they have their cat engine up, a cat food token and a witch's oven and a Meat Hook Massacre out, they're draining me for 4 life a turn easily. Just in you lose life. So I think it's just a good card, and I think as Rakdos Sacrifice remains relatively near the top, it's going to stay there.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Are we still in black? Are we going to
yeah,
blue?
just I wrote Thoughtseize, but
Oh no, yeah.
Thoughtseize,
I think
thought
Thoughtseize is just the common
it's a
sense.
given.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's hand disruption. It's hand control. I think it's what makes the mid range strategies work. But every deck, like you said, every deck that has black in it, you're just migrating your fatal pushes and your thought seizes around. It's never a bad idea to just have a play set of them. I don't
yeah,
think it's going to go anywhere as a balance card. You lose 2 life. Like if you have to shock into land for it, you're losing 4 life just to disrupt one card. But it's a game leveler.
Yeah.
Blue was hard for me. I'm not really a blue player. I
Oh,
kind
get
of
it.
scuff.
You play. You were very controlly when I met you.
I am not.
You always pack a little something something in the sideboard, or you know. I think. Well, I would say if I was going to talk about specifically blue cards and not talk about something like spirits,
Hmm.
um, uh, you're if you're let's I would say generally. So if I wasn't talking about something specific like spirits, or is it Phoenix, or something that has um, a deck associated entirely to that, like you're not going to see like ledger shredders outside of Visit Phoenix, but what you might see, like the spells I would warn you about would be something like censor, or like Jawari disruption. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, those are like the danger spells. Here, let me show you Jawari disruption. So this is a land basically, but it's a counter target spell unless you pay one. Which
Which is just enough early game to just
yeah,
stop you from putting your stuff together.
you can get got with this, like or the censor
And
with
sensor is essentially the same thing.
yeah, but with cycling. So not having one extra mana lying around with blue is probably they probably put these out there on the just in case. I need to because it's counter any spell,
Yeah.
so you could
And
get got with either of those.
and I would say those are the ones we're talking about. The common sense ones like spell pierces, negates, everyone knows about. We're not talking about multicolor here, so like that would be Dovin's
Yeah.
veto, absorb, and those are specific to control stacks. But anything that has blue in it, like you said, Joar's disruption, sensor.
Oh,
I also put.
mystical dispute too.
Oh, okay.
That's a staple and a half. So if you're playing blue,
Yep.
Uh, yeah. So if you're playing blue, beware of mystical dispute, which will cost them one to counter your spell.
And
Uh,
that'll come out in game 2 and 3 because those are. I don't know of any deck that plays this mate board.
yeah,
Um, and then I think another common sense one is make disappear that has the
yeah,
casualty on it, so you can sack something um, and essentially copy the spell casualty one. Counter target spell unless controller pays two.
yeah.
Um, so those are, I think, the non-negotiable. Red. Let's talk about Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Out of every single like what you listed, I think that's the one.
The one card.
Let's see. Let me think. So Fable Mirror Breaker. Let me pull it up so you can look at it. So Fable Mirror Breaker, and I don't think. Um, I don't think there is anything more, um, even in like the Gruul mid range stuff. Maybe Bone Crusher Giant
Yeah.
or a Braid. But we'll start with this. Yeah. So if you're playing red, you're playing Fable and Mirrorbreaker. It's good in everything.
Period.
Yeah.
Period.
It's got card draw. It's got discard. It's got creating tokens,
It's
and it's
got
got
ramp.
and it's got
Yeah.
this. It just so happens you can make a Kiki Jiki. And if you get a couple of these on, this is not a legendary creature. You get this on the battlefield with another one, and you can pump out like 10 creatures in a
Yeah,
turn.
I mean, we saw that in the Pro Tour. Like
Yeah,
Reed Duke was able to clinch wins just by having two Fables flipped, and on the
yeah,
end step, creating 10 reflections and swinging in for 20 still, right?
yeah,
Because it's on the beginning of the next end step. So you do this on your opponent's end step. On just all you need is one that isn't summoning sick, and then you just go off with all of your remaining mana.
yeah.
It's a major threat. It's almost as I do you think it's almost as good as Shieldred or as good as Shieldred? Hot take.
I think it's better than Shieldred. It is so much better than Shieldred. It is
Why?
like,
Defend
well,
yourself.
I can play one Go for the Throat and take out Shieldred. When this comes into play, I have two things to deal with immediately. Like, do I go for the Fable? Can I kill the Fable, or can I take a turn off and kill the Fable, or take a turn off and kill the token that's out there that's generating treasures? So ramping you, it's got ramp, and then if it comes to the second part of the saga, the when it gets to 2, you're
You're digging too deep.
yeah, it's too much. This thing is just on the cusp of being too good for any format.
Fable, and this is one of there's definitely a camp of people that are like ban Fable, the Mirror Breaker, but when we're talking about playing Magic, we're talking about playing with a limited information game, right?
Yeah.
And chapter 2, for the newer players out there, is one of those moments where you can dissect or you can extract some information from your opponent. Are they discarding? How much are they discarding? What deck are they playing? What do they need to put that combo together, or aggro strategy? If they're discarding too, more than likely they're looking for answers. If they're not discarding at all, in your mind, you should know that they have what they need and you need to be ready to respond. But Fable's just so good. It's so
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything you can really do about it either. It's just one of those. It's going to come
Period.
out. You have to expect it on turn 3, and that's just the way
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
I want to take a break here real quick for a call to action. So, hey, if you're liking this chat, if you're inspired by some of the cards that we're talking about, blast this episode out to some MTG friends that you know, and let's get a little bit smarter together. Send in your decks or your ideas for staples into us. So click like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitch. We're on Instagram, on Twitter. Always choose violence MTG on pretty much all of those platforms. Um, and share with us, connect, because we're doing this for us, but we only get better ourselves if we collaborate with you guys. So I think that wraps it up for Red. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, there's many. I mean, we could throw out Bone Crusher Giant, but
Yeah,
that's kind of in the
that's a
same
known.
category. This is like Bone Crusher Giant is one less than uh, Fable the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah, it's a different echelon
Yeah,
entirely.
but we can move
Um,
on to green. I think there's green's like the easy one.
yeah, I just came up with the elves. The mana dorks, your elvish mystics and your Llanowar elves.
Yeah,
What is green known for? Green is known for making big things that hit hard, and also for ramping. And the decks that have green in them, that are splashing green like a Tarka red or whatever, are utilizing just the ramp version of it, right? Like they're playing 4 of elves,
yeah, and
or technically 8 of.
that's Llanowar elves and then Elvish Mystic.
Yep, and they say the same thing. You tap, add green.
Yeah,
This is if you see opponent play a forest. Almost always, even before turn 0, one of my considerations when I'm evaluating my hand in Pioneer is, do I have a way to remove an elf? Because if you stop the elf game, you can slow them down enough to put your engine online.
yeah, not completely, but just a little bit. You can slow them a little bit.
A little bit, but it's worth it. Is there anything else worth talking about in green?
I think we should nick those.
Yeah,
It's very specific.
that's green tangent,
Right.
right? Right. It's
It
you can use it in any devotion deck, right? It's a legendary land, going for $26, 24.42 off the list.
yeah, it's a
Which
steal.
you tap to add a colorless, or you pay 2, you tap it, and you add a color. Add to your mana pool an amount of mana that color equal to your devotion to that color.
Mhm.
So we see it in mono green because they put a lot of green pips out there, and then they tap for a bajillion. And how much do you need for them to go infinite? You play with the infinite combo? I don't.
Oh yeah, the infinite combo with
It's
this.
like 12 or 17 or
It
something.
doesn't matter. They can generate it. It's like they can just
Tap,
it,
untap, tap.
we should do a whole like breakdown of mono green and just
Yeah.
walk through. We'll talk about mono green a little bit later too. It's very uh, it's a lot.
So those are the staples as they have existed so far. You want to talk about Wilds of Eldraine?
Oh, like
The
what?
cards I brought? Yeah.
Yeah, bring it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
let
cool.
me stop sharing with you.
Okay. So, for all you budget aficionados out there, JJ put this on me because I had, my name's Navisk8r and I have a problem. I had I had a big problem where I would just buy packs for that dopamine hit. And I would be lucky. I would be abnormally lucky in our play group. Like after any set came out, everyone's like, all right, Navigator, what'd you pull? I got a play set of Lilianas, I got Shieldreds, I got
It
a
was
Wandering Emperor.
unnatural. It was unnatural.
Absolutely uncanny, and I knew I needed to announce my retirement before I lost. So that box over the shoulder actually came in earlier this week um, with every set that comes out now. And again, JJ is the one that showed this to me. You can order a play set of every common and uncommon for like 50 to 60 bucks. Which, I mean, again, it may not be totally cheap to everyone, but is way more cost effective than buying a draft booster box. And you're getting complete sets of stuff. So I rifled through a few colors of decks that I'm playing a lot of right now to talk about what I think might have an impact on the format.
So commons, uncommons.
Commons,
You're gonna
uncommons.
say why they're gonna be good, and I'm gonna tell you why they're garbage.
Yes, exactly. So this was right before we hit record. So JJ pulled him up so it's easy to share with you guys, but I
Yeah.
told him not to read them.
I have not
Um,
looked at any of these, so these are in the
so
order that you requested,
right.
and
So
I'll read
the
them
first
as you go.
so the first one is Torch the Tower.
Torch
Torch
the
the
tower.
Tower.
Hold on. Torch the
Yeah.
tower. All right.
Boom.
So bargain.
So yep.
Torch the
One
tower.
red.
Okay.
Yep.
Instant.
Yep, instant speed, one red, bargain, which means it's a new mechanic. So it means you may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast this spell. And Torch to the Tower deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If this spell was bargained, instead it deals 3 damage to that permanent and you scry 1. If a permanent dealt damage by Torch the Tower would die this turn, exile it instead. This
Okay.
card is amazing. It's a fiery impulse on steroids. All
It
right.
is pretty
One,
good.
you screw spell mastery. You could turn one this, right?
Are you gonna replace play with fire? Is that the
Um, I don't know. So this is
or
like a
put it with
fiery
it?
impulse. I'm thinking about it both in terms of my Phoenix deck right now and in Pia Scalds. And I guess creativity, having a very similar deck to um, Phoenix also has fire impulses. But in my mind, in the Pia Skull's perspective, I have a lot of tokens on the battlefield. So
Mm-hmm.
getting to 3 damage is super easy for me. I can cast this from exile, I can cast it at instant speed, and it exiles what it kills. It exiles what it kills. So either I deal 2 damage, I fire impulse it, and then I exile it. I'm looking at you, Recto Sack. Or
So you
I
would, in
can
response to them sacking the cat at end of turn, you would torch the tower and
well,
exile it.
I can't do it I can't do it because it's a part of the cost for the activated ability, right? So I can't if they have a witch's oven out. But if either A, the witch's oven is ever tapped, or if they don't have the engine online, then I can start exiling their stuff. And then later in the
Wait,
game,
it's part of the what?
casting costs or not activating costs for Witch's Oven. So
Just the
it's tap,
sacrifice.
comma, sacrifice a creature. Yeah. So you
Uh,
can't once they activate it, you can't interfere with the casting cost. Yeah.
hmm.
Um, so early in the game, it's exile. It's a fire impulse with exile. Targets creatures or planeswalkers, right? So in the control scenarios, I'm pinging the Wandering Emperor you just played at instant speed. I'm bringing down uh, your Teferis to eye level. Later in the game, it deals with Grease Fangs. It deals with Mayhem Devils. It deals with a lot of threats in the format. So I think Torch the Tower is an amazing pickup right now. It's what, 5 cents? Get 100.
Do it now.
Do it now. Stonks.
All right.
This is
Deal.
not
So
financial advice.
I think you're right that this is better than Fiery Impulse. I
Yes.
think it's going to be replacing it in, with the exception of no, I think it, yeah, I think it's better than Fiery Impulse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's an accent to it.
Yeah. Especially
Either
for
or.
Scalds, like you're saying, for Scalds it's just, but do you have any burn in Scalds?
Yeah, I do. I pack fire impulses and play with fires. So
Well, this is
there's
definitely made for
definitely
that.
yeah. So I think Torch the Tower is a great slot in. What do
Okay,
you think? Can you tear it down?
I don't think so.
Where's it weak? It's a
I mean,
solid card.
it's not a play with fire. I'll say that it's because you can't target the player,
Yeah.
so I don't think you can replace play with fire with it. But I think definitely you can replace fire impulse.
Okay.
So
Fair.
it is not garbage. It is only half garbage.
All right. Witch Stalker Frenzy.
Witch Stalker Frenzy. Okay,
So a
so
question in the back of my mind is always, how are you going to deal with Shieldred? Right? We talked about it as a staple. It's a 5 toughness creature. Right now, the only removal spells outside of the black just destroy it. The only damage based removal spells that we have for a Shieldred outside of double spelling it is a Lightning Axe, right? So this one I'm kind of on edge. I literally just saw this and I was like, ooh, this is a definite maybe. So it's 3 in a red, which is a lot. But it says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature that attacked this turn. So again, Pia Scald's hat on. I have a lot of creatures attacking at once, more often than not. And if this is an exile, even I can cast this for 1 red mana. You know, after the declare attacker step, before damage, um, uh, from exile and make another Thopter for one red. And it says Witch Stalker Frenzy deals 5 damage to target creature. I think this is a maybe, but I think it's a chonky old damage based removal spells that hits pretty much everything you would want to hit.
yeah, I'm thinking. So this would be definitely like a Boros aggro ad.
Yep.
It is. Um, so I think the card you would try to replace with it would be, I think, Reckless Rage. So in that case, I think it is an excellent exchange, with the exception of, because the 5 damage is definitely better. I'm trying to weigh. You have to wait to attack, but also it's an instant. Is That's a tough one, because you're definitely with like Boros aggro. You're definitely attacking in, and 5 damage is what you want. I think it'd be worth trying, like play testing it out to see how that works.
I
Uh,
maybe, maybe even put it in the sideboard. Like for me, instead of deck, I don't know. If instead of deck and stone, maybe it's a sideboard card. I
well,
don't know. I think
well,
it's a worthwhile removal spell to take a look at.
so what you're up against is reckless rage and rending volley, right? Um, so rending volley, that's specific to uh, white and blue, right? So outside of white and blue, you're worried about Shieldred, and this handles Shieldred, and you can definitely pay one for this. That's not a big deal. Um,
Yeah.
or if you happen to have something untapped, pay it on your end step. I would, I definitely think some playtesting would be, you know, called for, but I can see this being good. I can see it being good.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's worth playing around. Like I said, I literally just saw this. I'm not one for real like when the set review comes out or the set's released to click through it digitally. I need to hold it, take a look at it, or normally I learn from other players. So this was the first time I leafed through it and I was like, huh, maybe.
Yeah,
So
it's a fun maybe definitely for limited, and but I think if you're gonna talk if you're talking specifically Pioneer, I think it's something that could work as long as because you have to be very aggressive, and I think that type of Scald's deck that you're playing is very aggressive. It's got haste for all those Thopters, so you can definitely reduce this down to one easily.
yeah, easy.
Yeah,
The next one I wanted to talk about also instant speed, break the spell.
break.
Break this spell. So
Okay.
this is a common one white instant destroy target enchantment. If a permanent you controlled or a token was destroyed this way, draw a card. All right, and I think this is really good for a couple of reasons. One, like I said, my biggest enemy is a temporary lockdown. On
Mm-hmm.
top of staples like Fable and all that stuff, ossification, leyline binding, all the enchantments we just talked about at instant speed for 1 mana, you could be like, nah, Felicia. Um, um, Furthermore, as we get further into this Wilds of Eldraine um, uh, meta, these enchantment tokens are a thing. They're real.
Yeah.
And some of them, an opponent may cast and it'll affect your creature. So if you're strapped for cash, this is an if. This is an if. If you're strapped and you have one of those tokens attached to one of your creatures, so you control it, you can target one of those enchantments and draw a card. But primarily, it's in the deck for kind of those removal enchantments that you're worried about, that I'm worried about in playing aggro, and for it's at the right cost at the right speed. I saw it and I was like, yeah. I talked with you right now. What I'm running is Destroy Evil. Um, which is 2 mana, so it's one more, but it also destroys a creature with toughness 4 or greater. So it's another Shieldred answer, which is good. But this is, I feel like, is something that I could main board because it's the right cost.
I'm just gonna tell you this is garbage.
Why?
Well, it's a demystify, right? So
Yeah.
I can tell just off the top of my head, Light of Hope is better than this. It's a
What's Light of Hope?
Light of Hope. Here, let me show you.
See, this is why we do this. Teach me, Sage One.
Light of Hope. So gain life, destroy an enchantment, or put a counter on something. It's got three things. Yours is like you have to
What
just.
the heck, man? I said, what do I'm playing
I'm
Pia Scald. I'm worried about enchantments. What do I do? Where is this? You let me struggle around and figure it out on myself.
yeah. This is how it works. So you're supposed to say things that you like, and I'm supposed to tell you why they're garbage. This is this is our relationship right now.
Oh my gosh.
Every once in a while, you'll pick out a Shieldred or a Wandering Emperor, but right now we're in my world of like Light of Hope is better than that. So
I
but for limited, yeah, you put this in the sideboard, unless so you know what this if a permanent you controlled or a token was destroyed this way, draw a card. You know why this is in Wilds of Eldraine and why it's useful and limited is because of the new those roll auras that are out.
Yeah, that's what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
so those it might be good if you want to, but it's garbage mostly. Pass.
Okay. All right. I'll concede. I'll concede. All right. How about this one? Return triumphant.
Return triumphant. Okay. Return triumphant.
So this is colorless and a white, sorcery speed, return target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Create a young hero roll token attached to it. Again, don't really care about the roll token. But white recursion. What say you?
Well, what's the other white recursion? Uh, it's in. I put it in ones that's called patch something patch up. So patch up is kind of like that. Here, let me show patch up. So there's, but you can return up to 3 creatures of total mana view. So that's
But it costs 3.
pretty close. It costs 3. It costs 1 more. So this is a return target creature card with mana value. So basically, it's for Greasefang or humans, right? Is that where you see this, or something new?
Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm messing with the buttons. I think this is Greasefang. I think you'd be able to tell me better. You play more Greasefang than I do. I was thinking maybe there's room for it. You know, I hate it when people kill my Steamkins and Pia Scalds or my Pias, but I don't think it's worth removing something for it.
No.
I
I
think
would.
Greasefang, this is the place.
I think if you take any gas out of your Pia Scalds, it's always gonna. It'll do more bad than good.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other one was Can't Stay Awake. That's what it was. Oh. Man, maybe it's not Can't Stay Away. Sorry. Can't Stay Away. Okay. This is what it's up against, is this one with Flashback. So it's kind of groovy there, you know. Return it and then put that on. I would say, I wonder, maybe there's a new place for this. I love this card, by the way. I love it. This is the kind of thing I would play with just to goof around with it and see what I can make with it. Because you can do some cool things with it.
I think so. I think white recursion is worth looking at.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like it. I'm not sure where it goes, but I like it.
All right. How about this next one? Another common. Slumbering keep guard. Like the guard of the keep, but he's asleep. All right. So I think this is an enchantment include. I think you take out the generous visitor maybe, or the the little squirrel that gives +1/+1 counters, because this lets you dig through your deck with every enchantment. It's Slumbering Keep Guard's a 1 white creature human knight into common. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. Then it has an activated ability for 2 and a white. Slumbering Keep Guard gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each enchantment you control. So like it has its own ethereal armor on it, where it'll just plus itself up, and all of a sudden you have these 2 colossal hitters. What do you think? What say you? Stop making that face.
I will say that's a pass. This doesn't do anything.
Oh my gosh. All
All
right,
the
just you
stuff
wait.
all the stuff in auras and enchantment decks, they get 1/1 counters on them, or they go get you more enchantments. The scry one is cute, but you know.
All right, I'm gonna put it in my enchantment stack just to show you. All
All right,
right.
what's next? This is garbage.
All right. So what are we at right now? 2 garbage, one I don't know, maybe. All right, I'm okay with this record.
Yeah,
It's
you're
better than my
actually
RCQ.
you're doing a lot better than I thought you would be.
Oh, I don't know what that means. Eerie interference, another instant. I'm all over these instants.
To you and creatures, that's an interesting fog. So
Okay,
you understand that term fog?
I guess.
I'm gonna
What does it
just
mean, Dad?
fog is an
As
actual
in
card,
fog of
and it's
war?
the original prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. So when someone says fog, they're talking about this card and this effect.
Okay,
This
the more
prevent
you
all.
know.
But this
Which is
one,
legal in Pioneer. What the hell?
but look, this is for one moment in time, right? So prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and creatures you control this turn. So it's a
It's an
fog.
aggro stop.
But what's
It's
cool
3
about it?
mana.
What's
Lotus,
cool? What I love
Saurus
about it
Lotus.
is that it's creatures as well, to you and creatures. You could actually
You could block them.
well, you could stall Rakdos Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Um,
at the beginning of their turn, you could cast this and just not give them a chance to sack you to death, which is
stay
interesting.
alive.
Yeah, it is interesting, but I'm not a big fan of just cards that just stall the inevitable. Like, like you can't. I could see it as just a stall tactic. If you need, I used to do that. I would have cards for my turn and cards for their turn. Um, yeah, definitely not competitive in any way. It's not a competitive card.
Okay.
It,
Boom, 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 boom.
but it's cool. It's cool. It's like kind of fun. Kind of fun.
Cool art. All right. How about this one? Stroke of Midnight.
Okay, destroy target
Is it two? Is
permanent.
yeah?
That's interesting. That's a that's not something to be snorted at. But yeah, but I mean it is an online permanent. There's other cards that do that. Um, uh, let's see. There is, yeah. I don't think it's fast enough. I don't think it's as it is. So, um, in white specifically, they just came out with one uh, that I'm trying to dig it up right now. They just came out with a destroy non-land permanent for 3. Or exile. It's an exile non-land permanent for 3. Let me find it because it's relevant. Oh yeah, there's all the enchantments of banishing light or borrow time. The enchantments that you exile a non-land permanent. Um, then there's a for 3. It's going to bug me if I don't remember what this is. It's oh yeah, that's a reduced to memory, which is a lesson. Oh, vanish into eternity. That's what it is. So let me show you what this one is. So this is Pioneer. This is what it's up against. So it's an instant for 3. It's instant for 3. So really the only issue is if you target a creature This one costs you more. Yeah, I don't know. It's so specific. It's just one thing.
So it's a maybe. It's a reactive spell. What about Azorius Lotus?
What? For what? Like, what are you taking out though? That's the hard
I
part.
don't know.
Like, what are you taking out of Lotus? I don't think you can do that because you need a board wipe or you need like an undo, that one that exiles um, all non-land permanents or something. Like, you're not gonna do half measures with them. Yeah, not. I would say not competitive. Not competitive. But you do get a human token. That kind of
We're
looks like
whiffing.
you if you grew a beard
Hey,
uh,
you'll see me in 2 years, just like
and
that,
if you wore a
with all
dress.
my magic cards on my back.
Yeah, but your wife kicks you out of the house.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So I pulled out the gingerbreads just because they're always good to have ready. All right. This one is one that I am not sure about, but it's a big I think. That's
What is-
the Totentaz Swarm Piper.
All right, let's get down this. Whenever Toten Taz, Swarm Piper, or another non-token creature you control dies, create a rat, and that can't block. And then target attacking rat gains Death Touch. Interesting. And you're talking about for Pioneer?
Yeah. What do you think about this? So this is one I wanted to ask you about. What do you think about this in Rucksack?
So you would basically play this whenever you sacrifice the cat, you make a rat,
And then you can give those rats death
and
touch.
then another rat. Yeah, I mean,
Is
maybe
this a pipe
one of.
dream?
Yeah, I think it's worth throwing one of in there. So when you have your cat out there, you're making rats. I don't know. It might be kind of. I would be willing to try this in Racksack. It's not taking the place of anything. It's like a one of in there just to see what happens. But just on the off chance you get your witch's oven, your cat out there, and your Totentan swarm piper. Now you're filling up the board with cats and rats, and
Cats and rats. What else could you want?
I kind of like it.
Right?
You can't
So
block with
that's
them, but
but you could give them death touch. They're like New York City street rats.
it would be. This wouldn't be like an essential add to the deck. It would be more of like, wouldn't this be funny? Like hold my beer moment.
All right.
Yeah.
How about the Little Red Riding Hood knockoff?
Uh, Ruby, Ruby. Okay. Um,
Now this is actually a good one. I think and include in maybe a Tarka Red or yeah, the Tarka Red. All of those Golgari fast stacks.
but are you gonna get this?
Or not Golgari. What's red green?
It's a gruel.
Girl.
Yeah. Are you gonna get this though? Are you gonna get a creature with power 4 or greater?
It doesn't matter. It's instant speed haste too.
It's a
So I
one.
mean, it's haste. It's haste ramp.
Yeah, but
Um,
what's the satyr? The exact same hasty satyr. What is that?
oh, I don't know. This is why I talked to you about this. I don't know.
There's you have it. The Galia. I think that's her name. No. Dang it. Why am I terrible at magic? Uh,
Because you only play with me, and I'm not that good.
I'm gonna find this because this is what it's up against. Search.
Yeah. So
Galia.
Ruby.
Yeah, there it is. Galia
Yeah.
of the Endless Dance. Galia. There you go. So this is what it's up against. So can it outdo a 2/2 with haste? And then draw and discard. So it's not going to come even close to this.
Yeah, you draw 2 cards. That is
Yeah,
good.
it's very good. So it's cool. It's like an elf,
Yeah,
but
but
eh,
it's a 2 mana elf.
and
I don't know.
she's she's cool, but she's not a
She's no
satyr.
Dahlia.
Look at Seder. She's partying too. She's like, what? And she's like choking some dude out. I mean,
Okay, all right. Now this is one for a deck that I don't have built.
okay.
Um, and also don't know if it's really going to be meta, but it's for a fairy tribal deck. That's Obira, Dreaming Duelist.
Okay.
So for Demir, so blue black, legendary creature, fairy warrior. I picked this one to talk about just because the card text is value. So for 2 mana, you're getting a creature with flash, flying, and that whenever another fairy enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, I don't know if fairy tribal is a thing, but if it were, I feel like this is a no brainer.
Well, I mean, it's an easy little. Fairy tribal has been a thing in the past, but also flash tribal is. That's a good question. I really don't know. I don't think I can answer this one.
Yeah. So I think this is one to look at because Pioneer is so big. And as I mean, honestly, as you can tell from this discussion, like I don't know all the cards in Magic the Gathering. There's like more than 50,000 pieces, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many of those are in Pioneer, but because I know this tribal thing does exist in other formats, it leads me to believe maybe if it's not there yet, it will be. And I think this will be one of the lords in, like, I mean, just 2 mana flash flying. If it said nothing else, 2 mana flash flying 2/2, that's a good card.
Its limiting factor, of course, is it's legendary. So you're going to
So
be.
yeah.
It's going to be hard to have more than 2 or 3. I mean, and I think there's like just so you know, like one of the fairies out there would be like Brazen Borrower. That's a fairy. Rankle Master. So it's in the right colors. I don't think I could. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna get there. It's
Okay.
cool. It's cool. It might be a good commander, like a fairy
Yeah.
commander. There's still probably better
Okay.
ones. Yeah. Was this the
Okay.
last one?
That was it. That's what I had. The top 10.
I'm gonna stop sharing with you.
Okay. So all in all, you win some, you lose some.
Mostly garbage, you know.
Mostly trash, hot trash. Um, I'm, as it turns out, not very good at Magic the Gathering. You should probably stop listening. Thanks. This will be the last episode of Always Choose Violence.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead
Just
and pack
kidding.
it up. We suck at this.
No. Yeah, so that's what I had, and you brought something to today's episode that
Oh
I
yeah.
need you. You're gonna get my take on it. So
Oh
you want to give
yeah.
the backstory of this?
Yeah. So last week you were asking me a lot of questions. Like, so we're not good at this yet. So you like sent me a script, and then you're like just throwing out questions at me, and I was like, what deck beats what deck, and I kind of answered a little bit, but mostly I was like making stuff up. So I'm not a guy that relies on uh, just conjecture. I'm a data guy. So I went to the drawing board and I made for you. Let me find it here. Let me close this real quick. I got to make some room. So all right. Sharing button window there. Gotcha. All right. So because you harassed me so much last week about what decks in the meta would be good against other decks in the meta, I
Zoom
created.
up on that screen so we could see it.
Can you see it at all?
Yeah. I mean, we could see it, but I know there's more.
Oh well, I'd have to zoom way out because it's like this is the
Oh yeah.
monstrosity.
All right. This is the perspective we want to hear you talking about it
Yeah,
in. All right. So continue.
yeah. So I was. It's really just kind of measuring the meta with this. So what I did was I went and each one of these columns from top to bottom is one tournament somewhere. And I got many. I started in July, and I just picked out ones that had a good amount of results. And what I did was I made it so you can select down here in your in the little control panel. Let me zoom into this a little bit more. Whoa. Yeah. So with this, what you can do is, here, let me just start fresh. Right now it only works with the deck 1 and deck 2. But what it does is we'll select 2 decks. So I'll select Devotion to Green. And what it says in this line is how many decks are represented in all of the tournaments that I've looked at. And
And
then
how many tournaments are there right now?
it's like something like 30 or 40. It's like,
Holy smokes.
but there'll be more. We're just going to keep making it grow. And then, so what I wanted to do was do a deck by deck comparison. What deck is better than what other deck? So you select, like, pick another deck that is a typical opponent to this.
Pia Skulls.
Pia Skulls. There it is. Boros Skulls. All right. So in all of our, Boros Skulls is still relatively new. So not a lot of representation. There's 103 Devotion to Green decks and only 7 in these tournaments. But every time, what the presence factor is, every time, this 3 right here is the number of times when it was in the same tournament as this other deck. This is the number of times it came out on top.
Oh, wow.
And then the same thing. So this is the number of times Boros Scalds came out on top when it was there with Devotion to Green. And if you zoom back, what that looks like in the data is like, yeah. So right here. So there's Scalds way up there in this tournament on the 30th of July. It beat Devotion. And here's Boros Scalds here. It lost terribly. Here it won. There it lost. So it kind of was back and forth a little bit. There wasn't a lot of consistency with what was beating what. And this is just what it looks like graphed out. Devotion to Green, and then Boros Scalds.
And what's the XY axis there?
So
So this is
the
over
date.
time?
Yeah, this is just dates, and this is the number of. This is basically just graphs out the wins.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's since sometimes the decks weren't played at all, like there was nothing in this tournament, so there's little gaps. So that the graph doesn't really matter, but this is what. So like, let's pick a different one. Like, what's in another, like Rakdos mid range?
Or do Rakdos sack? Oh, Rakdos mid.
So Rakdos mid range.
Yeah. Wow.
So check out what you're looking at. This is awesome. This made me very happy when I saw this. Oh, not just the knowledge made me happy. So what this tells me is that I'm a good representation of both decks, right? So 103 Devotion to Green and then 63, and whenever they came together, this is how many times each of these decks came out on top. So Devotion to Green was ranked higher 81% of the time above Rakdos mid. And if you see what that looks like, so the blue is Devotion to Green, and then Rakdos mid is here. You can kind of track. We can even change this to like a line graph. It's a little bit easier to see. That looks like a weird art. Yeah. Anyway, we'll just stick with the numbers up here. 81%.
Buy it on our Etsy.
So we can say almost definitively that Devotion to Green is almost always better than Rakdos mid. Almost always. And we can rank it like that. We can say like Devotion to Green over Rakdos mid. Now, then what you do next is you change Devotion to Green to something else, like
What about sack?
Is it Arclight?
Okay.
Well, I want to do like a very common one that has a lot of rep. All right, so is it these are almost neck and neck, right? So then you would say, okay, so Arclight's coming out ahead of Rakdos mid, and you would just build a
A tier
tier.
list.
So you would eventually end up going through all the decks, but that's the plan with this.
Oh
Um,
wow.
but yeah, so
So
that's
this is how we develop our own data centric tier list,
yeah,
not who's winning the tournament. Because when you add decks 3 and 4, we're going to start to see a lot of the nuance,
yeah,
right? When you can test, like, okay, when Rakdos mid range was doing well, or sorry, when Rakdos was, or mono green was doing well, and Rakdos mid range was not, what else was present?
yeah.
What allowed mono green to dominate?
Well, the
Uh,
density matters too. So,
mm,
like, say if you look at these two, um, another factor that I'm working with is deck density. So these two rows right here measure the density of the deck in that single tournament. So this one says Rakdos mid range was 18%, almost 19% of this tournament, and you can see how deck density in a tournament matters. In when you like, let's say, what's something that I was looking at earlier. I think Devotion to Green and Rack Sack. So Rakdos Sack. So look, Devotion to Green, overwhelming Rakdos Sack. So Rakdos Mid and Rakdos Sack are garbage compared to Devotion to Green. But when you look at the density, you see that this is Devotion to Green density in this one tournament. So density has to play a factor. Like, it reduces the variability of winning. Like when you go up against that other deck, when say this tournament you see, this one Rakdos deck plays 4 different devotion decks. It's
right.
pitted against it, but this one only plays other green decks. It's like it kind of masks like it creates like a little Trojan horse of data. But
This is awesome.
so like deck saturation for these decks, it matters, and I'm trying to figure out how that plays into it.
And this is really cool. For this goes back to kind of why we're doing what we're doing. And JJ, I'm gonna try and share my screen here in a little bit.
You may stop
Um,
sharing.
sure, sure. So let's do a behind the curtain look at all the Always Choose Violence studio. Let me see if I can figure this out. So
On the
screen,
fly. Good luck.
boom, data dump, share. Look at me. All right, now you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, I see it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is where we're coming from. So what JJ's building is an extension of something we've been working on for the better part of the last year, where we're documenting pretty much every game of Pioneer we play. Whether it's against someone on LGS or someone on Spell Table or against each other.
I like the
And we
LGS rando in there.
yeah, yeah, and we're coming out with wins. How many times has Dex played against each other? Who's winning? We have a thing for pilots, so we see if there's any
That one's kind
error.
of personal, I think.
um, we're keeping track of it. So we have a data-based approach to what we're trying to do. And it's not perfect. It's a work in progress. But you look at things like, freaking MTG Goldfish or, MTG Top 8, and they'll give you statistics. But they won't talk to you about method. They won't talk to you about collection. This is all, this is another sheet that JJ built. Like, so for instance, you want to look at Lotus Field. These are some of the Lotus Field matchups, who it's winning against, who it's losing against. This is all, the numbers don't really matter, but it's a growing database, because what this demonstrates really is our approach, this is what we're doing here at Always Choosing Violence.
Yeah, and the more this has like a twofold um, kind of experience of we're learning every deck, like all the decks in Pioneer. We're getting familiar with them, so we know. Like there were very few decks in the spreadsheet that I didn't know about. Some of them you could see they're starting to emerge. Like I saw more of the Rona decks in the tournaments coming up, and some mono black mid range was in there, but like you can see these decks coming up and starting to emerge on the scene, and they really shake up the meta a little bit to see when it like if it's a combo deck, if it like that. Remember Boros Convoke came out, and then Boros Scalds came out like right on its heels, and it quickly surpassed it, and then Boros Convoke kind of disappeared, but you can see it, Boros Convoke still is in the meta. It's still being played, but it's interesting.
Yeah. So that is pretty much what I had. We talked about it. We kind of got into our methods, which wasn't something we were planning on, but it's great. I think full transparency, understanding why we're doing what we're doing, hopefully speaks to someone that's trying to do the same thing that we are. You know, going from just casually enjoying Magic to trying to win a couple tournaments.
Yeah, and it's important. Yeah, it's important to understand the basics of the meta. So whenever you see a new card, and that's we joke around like, is it garbage or is it good? You'd be surprised at how often you'll hit something and you're like, I'll just stare at it for a while, going, this could be something. It could be something, and you have to actually try it out to see if it works. And you have to think of it in terms of where does it fit in this meta, and so you have to have a wide knowledge of the entire meta.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we've structured things the way that we have. You know, last week we talked about, metas and meta shifts, and this week we're talking about staples. So I think we're just kind of that card selection where we took a look at Wilds of Eldraine. That was a very raw look at, how we do card evaluation at our level. There are people that are way better at it than us, but it's like, here's a box of commons and uncommons from the new set. What's going to stick?
Yeah.
And I think we found a couple of good ones. So you have anything else you want to say, JJ?
No. Thanks for joining us. And feel free to send us your deck ideas, your questions, things you wanted us to talk about. We'd love to bring those up on the show, tackle the ideas and the problems you're having with your decks. That's kind of where we're at right now. We're exploring the meta to its maximum, and nothing's off the table. We're going to look at everything, with the exception of the garbage cards that Navisk8r pointed to earlier. Next time we'll talk about rares and mythics.
Yeah. And the best way to do that, guys, hit subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitch. Every week after we do this podcast, like right after we sign off here, we are going to go play some Paper Pioneer, which is a part of our data collection process and also kind of how we have fun. So you do that again, YouTube, Twitch. We're on Instagram, Always Choose Violence MTG, and on Twitter. What is the Twitter handle now?
Our Twitter handle is ACVMTG. Always Choose Violence MTG. ACVMTG.
Yeah, reach out to us on any of those platforms, and we're glad to interact and hope you got some value. So I'm going to harness the spirit of General Patton here when we say, in preparation for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So refine your warrior's arsenal and always unequivocally choose violence.
All right.